Well, I'm with Chris Thomas, Douglas Central, and we're having our one-year review sort of thing. Well, I've got to say, first of all, you've had quite a high profile this year already. I mean, Minister of Policy and Reform is the grand title, and you've really relished that, would that be right in saying?
I don't regret the last year. It's been a very difficult year. What's very important for me, and I had the chance to do it in 2013, I didn't really have it at the election last year, but I've got the chance to do it now, is to wave my orange and purple manifesto around, because this is very important for me.
That's the one you had last year, right?
This is the one I had in 2013 when I set out a vision, and this is the one I had in 2016 for the general election, and there's a consistency. So we had I presented a proper manifesto with policies, because that's what matters to me. Policies matter. Presented a vision back in 2013, and last year I actually presented a programme for government, and I'm absolutely delighted, and that's probably why the year has been busy for me and why I've been high profile, because I think, and I decided that the programme for government was enough in line with my manifesto for me to take myself seriously when I'm proposing it as Minister of Policy and Reform.
And explain that to the public. It is this thing about you set targets, you set goals, you're showing where the government is now, where you're hoping to be. Something that hasn't really been there before.
Well, it has.
Well, in the same way?
Well, I don't think it has quite in the same way, but it has. Sir Miles Walker always talked about a prosperous and caring society, and we have 20 outcomes. People who've looked back into it will notice, if they do, that Sir Miles Walker's programme back in the 80s had 20 outcomes. So there is definitely historical precedent, but I think it became a bit unfashionable in Manx government to do that, to focus so much on policy and what we were trying to do, and that's what I'm pleased that I've been part of it. So the Council of Ministers, and I didn't become Howard Quayle, he'll be glad to know, once I've joined his Council of Ministers. Like two other people, we didn't vote for Howard Quayle as the Chief Minister, but during that time, October, November, December, we put together a programme for government that was sufficiently in line with what we were trying to do in Manx politics to agree to work together for the interests of the island.
Remind me, who did you vote for?
I voted for Alf Cannon.
Right.
So three members of the Council of Ministers didn't vote for the Chief Minister to be Chief Minister. That's Alf Cannon, myself and Kate Beecroft.
Yeah, you all got good jobs, didn't you, out of it?
So I don't think I see being a politician as being a job. Being a politician is about putting in place the policies that you believe will make a difference for your community, and that's how I've always seen politics. So in the last administration there was an obsession with economic growth almost for its own sake. Economic growth is only valuable if it's helping people have better lives, and that's why I'm very pleased that this government is focusing on median earnings for people.
Okay. Well, now you've seen the other government, you've seen this one, obviously you've had this year inside the hallowed Comin and all that sort of thing. How do you work out too, besides what you said already? I mean, do you feel quite positive about the direction of travel, for instance?
I do feel positive, but later on, if it goes according to your plan normally, you'll be asking me how I rate this government.
I'll do it right now if you want.
Okay, and I think we only as yet should get 5 or 6 out of 10 for our performance.
That's interesting, because?
I think we deserve more than that, but I think we should only give ourselves 5 or 6, especially to be consistent with what I've said in the past.
Yes. So you're self-critical, very self-critical here
very
about the government, and what about your? I mean,
I think every person, pretty much every person in Tynwald deserves more than 5 or 6, but the evidence is that we only would get rated 5 or 6, and I'll give you the evidence for that.
Yeah.
The first one is that only half the Manx population came out and voted, which not very satisfying. And then we had the social attitude survey, and only half the people that filled in that social attitude survey said that the government was making a positive difference to their lives, which can't be very satisfying for us. And then earlier this week, we had quite a significant protest, a well-argued protest, a reasonable protest.
You were there?
We did have a group of people. I managed to photobomb the picture alongside the protesters. I thought that was quite an achievement. So in the Isle of Man newspaper's version of the picture, I'm there as a protester against the government, according to the way.
How seriously do you take that sort of protest?
Well, we have to take it seriously. If nearly 100 people have taken the time to come along to make banners and gather, we have to take it. Inside the social attitude survey, nearly 1 in 10 people said that one of the worst things about living in the Isle of Man was the government. it didn't get in the top 3, but that's quite a significant minority. So that's why I say at the moment we can only rank ourselves 5 or 6, but we all deserve more. And the reason we deserve more is because we are doing better than the last administration. We are clear about our objectives and we've written them down in the programme for government. It's just we haven't as yet managed to persuade people that we've got the right objectives, we know what we're doing, and we've got the right policies in place to deal with the attitude. So I'm optimistic, I'm positive, I'm confident, and I hope that by the end of this year there'll be the first signs that we're beginning to get the confidence and trust of the Manx population.
Just to make you feel better, I counted them. There was only 50, not. I know some media went for 100. I don't know how they doubled the number, but it's still at the end of the day, it's a protest, isn't it? Why? You must be asking this all the time. Then, why we're not feeling that much better? But I'm getting the impression you think there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Definitely, I think 2018-19 might be the cusp of it all. I think we might have some news that's not completely positive, but what people should remember is there are lots of good things about living in the Isle of Man, and we'll be celebrating those in our special year.
And we should do another interview, because I think we're going away from you, and I want to talk more about you.
But what's really important for me is I have policies to deal with the really important issues, and the really important issues are why people are not satisfied with living in the Isle of Man, and why it doesn't stack up for them economically, and why, unfortunately, quite a few people have left the island, younger people particularly. We need to address that, and I think with the living wage, with the minimum wage, with investigating what's wrong with the costs for running small businesses in the island, we're beginning to tackle that. Focusing on median earnings will also make sure that we remember that pensioners need to have sufficient income to be happy with their lot. Benefits, I think we're now to the level of benefits where we've got to start thinking about making sure that we're not punishing people for living on the island. So that's one major problem. Another major problem is the pensions issue.
And this is Chris Thomas personally talking here as well. This is what you firmly believe in.
That's what I believe. I just go back to it again. I go back to it again. My two orange and purple manifestos are sufficiently similar to government's programme for government for me to be happy working with my colleagues.
So you in the tent must be quite beneficial then, because you've got direct access to this whole way of the super tankers travelling.
And I understand how hard it is to change it around. So my first question in 2013, when I was elected in Douglas West, as it was called then, was about a programme for government and about how we showed it. Second question was about the gas prices and how we were going to regulate energy. I have been incredibly dogged, I think, in asking questions and developing alternatives.
Have you got an alternative to the Manx gas situation?
I have.
No, you.
Very much so. I resigned from the Office of Fair Trading when the Manx gas agreement was introduced.
Goodness, yes.
It was me who Amy Burns and her colleagues had the trust in presenting their petition to about the water and sewerage charge, and ever since then I've been working out how we can change the nature of the delivery of utilities and communications and transport and energy on the island. It's a very difficult issue because we're dealing with substantially large offshore investors. We're dealing with expectations that might not be met, but we have a work in progress on looking at the way we regulate the utilities and the energy companies, and that's in my name.
It's all very positive, but I mean, are you enjoying the job?
Very much so, Paul. I mean, chit-chat with you all of the time. Today I'm being deadly serious because it is a serious business government. You know that last week we had a chat in a more convivial environment, and that's also part of political life in the Isle of Man, because it's very much a people business as well. We get elected with very small constituencies, but what I've tried to bring to the table is not only the Chris Thomas as a person, but Chris Thomas as a capable person who's got policies that are in line with what the Manx people want and need for a better Isle of Man.
What did you vote yourself again? Did you give yourself a number there on your personal
I think I deserve more than 5 or 6, and I think most of my colleagues deserve more than 5 or 6.
Yeah, okay. Do you fancy seeing this as a long-term? I mean, we'll be sitting here in 4 years with your next one, manifesto and that sort of thing. Long-term for you? Career politician?
Well, I'm not a career politician because I only started when I was 48 or something
I'm talking about the future.
like that. But in the future, I will be standing again, I'm not religious, but whatever you say, willing at that point.
Yeah.
I've got it's damaging my work-life balance. It's not exactly in balance these days, and I am suffering through being in politics. But
so what do you mean suffering?
I just mean it's a very, it's not like a regular job. It's 24 hours. It's a full-on.
Suffering though, was that your personal life?
I can honestly say that inside my family would say it's better not being a politician than being a politician, because every politician I've spoken to has taken being a politician very seriously. Does say to you, it does affect you, and you've got to make sure it doesn't damage you. So, being there, constantly available in Strand Street to be stopped and asked something when you go to an agricultural show, being available to things, I enjoy it. But
does it come easily to you though?
I enjoy it. But my family would say that they quite preferred they preferred perhaps the Chris Thomas when he had a more regular job and was earning more money, and we were able to travel for a holiday, and it was just a holiday rather than constantly having to keep available. So to answer your question, I will stand again in 2021. I will put together another manifesto a year before this time. Yeah. I did declare last time a year before the election. That's what you're allowed to do under law. Yeah. And it will no longer be Isle of Man 2020, which has been my strapline, because we'll be in 2020. It'll be about an agenda for the Isle of Man in 2030 and beyond to 2050, because that's what sort of politician I am. I like to think the job of a politician is identifying the things that really matter to people, which is incomes, health, education, pensions, and then putting in place an action plan to deal with them.
You're quite a different politician from the rest of the group, and I think you know how I word that. You think differently, you certainly act differently. It doesn't seem to be your natural fit, but yet you know when you say you're enjoying it, and it's interesting, and you've taken pay cuts and something. What's driving Chris Thomas then to do this?
I do.
Just the Isle of Man and PMC?
Yeah, we came to the Isle of Man. We chose to live in the Isle of Man. I can't claim to be Manx because I wasn't born here, but I've been here now nearly 20 years. We like living here. My family have grown up here, but there are things wrong about living in the Isle of Man these days, and to some extent they've been amplified by some of the government policies in recent administrations, and I believe that I can be part of turning around some of those policies, putting in place different policies to make the Isle of Man better, and to deal with some of the challenges we've got to do with public service morale, mismatch between incomes and prices, to do with relatively strained government finances, but basically allowing the Isle of Man to be the wonderful place that it is, and we know it to be in the past and still is, but at the moment we're a bit pessimistic and negative about it.
And do you see yourself staying in this department? I mean, especially if you're coming back and back, or would you go for the top job? Do you ever see yourself wanting that?
No, it's not about jobs. As I said, politics for me isn't about jobs. It's about.
What would you do if you were asked to do it then?
I've made some substantial progress in terms of the structure of Isle of Man politics. For instance, we now have a better system to look at legislation through the Committee of the Whole House, through the Legislation Committee that I chair. We have a better system in terms of the role of the MLCs versus the MHKs. Big news about that in October, I believe, and obviously that you and I have talked about the Lord Lisvane report. Last year, one of the achievements was we looked at the single legal entity and the Isle of Man government. So what I'm basically saying is the top job, as you call it, the Chief Minister's job, is a coordinating job primarily in the Isle of Man. Full credit to our current Chief Minister, Howard Quayle. I get on fine. He's not like me. We don't share political aspirations and everything, but what we've got is a working agreement to deal with the programme for government. This matters to me. For the third time, I'm going to put up both documents and say, this orange and purple document is very close to the programme for government.
So the only thing that's going to change over the years will be that photo.
Yeah, I lied.
As you go grey,
I lied slightly on that photograph. No, the policies will change as well, because the policies have got to be in line with the current situation. But politics is about what you need to do. It's about policies, and it's about what can be achieved. And you can't achieve anything in politics without working with people. I supported Alf Cannon to be Chief Minister. 3 of the 4 candidates, because one candidate was a candidate that didn't quite put himself forward at the last minute, would have had me in this job, and told me they would have had me in the job that I'm doing.
It seems to be your fit, I have to say.
Howard Quayle didn't offer it to me before the election, but offered it to me after the election. Civil servants have a very important role in this. I think I have a lot of respect for them, and I hope that there's a degree of respect back. Being a civil servant is about helping society through its politicians choose what to do next. And another important role of a civil servant is to speak the truth to power. So sometimes politicians get a bit carried away with what they say that they're going to do, and it's for civil servants to rein them back and say this is what's possible. Okay. And I like to think that they're in part they're my allies, differently from some other politicians.
And if you missed any of that, don't forget you can get it in this politics. Thank you very much.
Sorry to talk for so long.
No, it's been interesting, and we'll do this next year, and we'll see you many times. We've just he's desperate to go. But do you think it's important that we keep, this
very much so, very much so. And we said we didn't want to talk about next year. But I really do hope that I can work more with the broadcasting community and media community, because the whole of public service broadcasting is up for grabs. And a part of that is community broadcasting. This last year, one of the things I'm particularly pleased about is the way we got a focus on the built environment and the heritage aspects of the built environment. And with my Culture Vannin hat on, I hope to be persuading the board later on this afternoon that we can take that into broadcasting.
Community, yes. Keep tuned, as they say, on that one.